What's up, everybody? Just wanted to mention a couple of things before we get started here. One, Robert Ortegon had to leave halfway through the recording session, so if you notice his absence, that would be why. Second, there's no movie clips in this episode due to technical difficulties, so if the episode sounds a little bare bones, that's why it is, so bear with us on that. And third and finally, we have a 420 episode coming. That's right, we will be focusing on How High, the movie featuring Method Man and Redman as the lead actors, and this one's going to be a lot of fun, folks. It's really one of my favorite movies, and we'll get into it a little bit near the end of this episode. But until then, enjoy the show. Collateral Cinema, coming at you. I'm Beau Maddox with Robert Ortegon and Frankie Avila. This is Collateral Cinema.
What makes you think you can bullshit your way into my head? Like every other pencil-neck piece of shit!
Welcome to Collateral Cinema, the only movie podcast that matters, where we focus on good movies, bad movies, and everything else in between in the world of cinema. We are podcasting straight from somewhere in South Texas, and yes, my friends, we are a 420-friendly podcast, so smoke it if you got it, my friends. Smoke it if you've got it. Now, folks, the movie we're focusing on this episode is one that leaves me a bit ambivalent, I guess. I mean, on the one hand, it's a lot of fun to watch, and it's definitely a technical marvel, but on the other hand, it just leaves me feeling a little bored by the end. And for an action movie, that should not happen. I mean, seriously, especially something that is supposed to be so adrenaline-fueled that it just kind of supposed to knock you out. You know, and of course, the movie that I'm talking about is 2015's Russian-American production, directed by Ilya Naishuller, Hardcore Henry. And first of all, this movie has a very interesting perspective to it. It's kind of modeled after a first-person shooter, not unlike Call of Duty or Medal of Honor or Battlefield or whatever. And that part of it is compelling, to say the least. I mean, it's definitely a different way to present a movie like this. I mean, usually you have your protagonist, you meet him, you develop the character a little bit, and then you throw him into a situation where he has to fight his way out, you know, like Die Hard, or even something like, or a buddy movie, even like the Lethal Weapon series. But this one, it doesn't have that. We're pretty much put into the role of Henry himself, and while it's definitely innovative, and at least a good 45 minutes in, it's definitely entertaining, and there's definitely a little bit of humor thrown in there, it just runs out of steam for me personally. I mean, this was picked by our fellow host, Frankie Avila, and I have to tell you, Frankie, I mean, he's not here with me right now, but it's a good movie, but it's not a good movie. It's like I said, it left me very, very, very in between. And I kind of feel like if there would have been just a little more character development on Henry's part, it probably would have really worked. But that's just not what we get here. I mean, we're pretty much just thrust right into this character's role. I mean, It opens with him waking up. Well, I mean, honestly, it starts with a flashback to him and his father, which is a memory that supposedly is something that's suppressed within his brain. And we're given a character that's supposedly a super soldier of some type. Like, supposedly his wife pretty much rebuilt him and revived him after he suffered a very, very serious and traumatic experience, which we don't see, first off. And it leads to something that's very sci-fi and also doesn't get a whole lot of explanation. And that is, of course, the main villain of the movie, Akan. And he inexplicably just has this telekinetic ability that, I don't know, I guess it's cool, and it kind of lends almost a little bit of a video game / even anime vibe to it, or even a comic book vibe, but it's just not something that really, really makes a whole lot of sense within this movie. I mean, it's about a super soldier that is just constantly being thrown into situations where he has to fight his way out over and over and over again. But how the telekinesis comes into play, it fails to... I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. like I said, ambivalent. That is definitely the key word here. I mean, there's a lot of really, really cool set pieces here, like I said earlier. I mean, there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of good characterization involved in each of these set pieces. I mean, and it actually does kind of attempt to explain certain, or should I say deconstruct certain tropes regarding first-person shooters and everything. And that is kind of noteworthy, but honestly, unless you're a gamer yourself, it kind of rings a little hollow. And I'm personally somebody who plays a little bit of video games here and there, but I don't really own a modern console. I don't really play stuff like Call of Duty and whatnot. The last first-person shooter I played was BioShock Infinite. That's more of a story-driven kind of sci-fi horror story, but this right here definitely takes all the tropes and conventions and trappings of games like Call of Duty or Battlefield, and it really just kind of shows how that would play out in real life. So that's kind of interesting, but I still kind of feel like that's not something that you make an entire movie out of. It's something that, you know, it sounds good on proverbial paper, but it just falls flat after a good little while. I mean, and there were certain scenes that made me laugh a lot. I mean, the humor is definitely one of the high points here, along with the actual technical aspect, but it just doesn't feel like anything that is cohesive, or it's only semi-compelling. And I mean, I guess you could say, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, supposedly it had several stuntmen working in the role of Henry, which is something that's noteworthy and it's interesting. But the reason they had to go through so many people is because the apparatus that they used to film this first-person angle kept on hurting some of the stuntmen. Like, it actually started to hurt the neck of the first guy that did this, and it actually almost seriously hurt the second stuntman. But I mean, but most of those guys still did a great job. But once again, it's just that presentation that's just constantly hitting you over the head with it, that honestly, it makes sense in a first-person shooter where you're controlling the character, but in an actual film with a narrative and with something that's supposed to have a plot structure to it, I mean, it just falls flat. You know, and I'm not saying that there isn't such a thing as plot structure in first-person shooters. It's just, it just doesn't translate well, is what I'm trying to say. And I mean, there's a lot that, like I said, is explained about first-person shooters, but there's also a lot that's lost in translation. And in a way, I mean, that's kind of typical of any movies that are even tangentially connected to video games, you know? I mean, it's kind of par for the course. But I don't know. It just leaves me with this feeling deep inside like it was entertaining for a little bit, but afterwards there just wasn't a whole lot of payoff. You know, it's like watching softcore pornography, essentially. It's like, yeah, it's kind of titillating, but ultimately there's very little in the way of payoff, and it's really a very fleeting experience. And that's kind of what I felt here. It's a fleeting experience of a movie. I mean, most all of it just kind of goes over your head entirely, but I mean, still there's a lot to unpack, though. There's a lot to unpack, and we are going to try our best to analyze this movie, to pick apart its technical aspects, its characterization, which was admittedly really, really good. I mean, I like the character Jimmy. He's fantastic. I mean, Sharlto Copley, I think that's the actor's name. He was from District 9. And he played multiple characters here, and that was very noteworthy, and that was some superlative acting there, but it's one of those things that, like I said, was lost in translation because of the whole first-person angle, the whole FPS angle to it. It just kind of felt very forced, I mean, that's another thing. A lot of this action is very forced, and it's because they're trying to explain all these different and deconstruct all these different tropes involved in such games, that ultimately it just kind of loses sight of certain other smaller issues like that. And ultimately, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's something that's worth watching. It's something that's worth experiencing. Like, I'm sure this must have been amazing on the big screen. I mean, I watched it on YouTube on my little computer. I mean, I don't have a small screen, but I have one that's big enough to get a good glimpse of everything. And I mean, yeah, it was a fun experience, but just for that moment. That's it. I mean, there's really little much to say other than the other things that I said we're going to unpack in the discussion part of this. But I guess that I'll conclude this intro by saying that, sometimes when you have an idea for a movie, and even if you really, really make it work, it doesn't mean that your movie is going to really work on other levels. I mean, there's a lot that was sacrificed here, and like I said, lost in translation when it came to how this movie was directed and how it was written. I mean, the screenplay is pretty decent, though. I mean, you're going to have a pretty solid screenplay for something of this caliber, but ultimately, it's something that just becomes bland after a while. It becomes very bland, and I don't know, maybe it's because that's very much some of the complaints that I have about first-person shooters in general. I mean, like I said, I don't play a whole lot of those types of games, so maybe there's just some things that I'm not getting here. And if you folks, ladies and gentlemen, if y'all have anything to add to that, if you want to try to change my mind or something like that, or kind of, show me other angles of this movie that might actually elevate it in my eyes, I mean, by all means, go ahead. I mean, go on Facebook, go on Twitter, go ahead and tell me. But I don't know. There's just nothing here that makes me want to go back and watch the movie again. Like, I mean, I've had at least 4 or 5 days to really kind of let this movie sink in, and ultimately it just leaves me with the same kind of feeling. So in conclusion, you should definitely watch this movie, everybody. I mean, we're going to go ahead and get into a plot summary or synopsis, depending on what we find online or what we decide to write, but ultimately, check it out. And definitely listen to our discussion, because we are going to break this movie down a little further. But yeah, just take this movie with a grain of salt, folks. Like a huge, massive grain of salt. I'm talking like those salt pellets that people use to soften their water. Like, take it with one of those, and maybe you'll have a good time. But me personally, I'm just kind of like, I'm very much on the fence here, folks. I mean, I'm sure Frankie will have some things to say about that when he hears this intro, but I think that it's fine. It's fine. So without belaboring this any further, we're going to go ahead and go into the synopsis for Hardcore Henry. And yes, there might be some spoiler alerts ahead depending on what we find. So yeah, stick around, folks. Hardcore Henry. A man wakes up in a Moscow laboratory to learn that he's been brought back from the dead as a half-human, half-robotic hybrid. With no memory of his former life, a woman who claims to be his wife tells him that his name is Henry. Before she can activate his voice, armed thugs storm in and kidnap her. As Henry starts to understand his new abilities, he embarks on a bloody rampage through the city to save his spouse from a psychopath who plans to destroy the world. All right, we are back. I am here with Robert Ortegon, Frankie Avila, and we have another special guest with us in the studio. What is your name? Felicia. And we are talking about the 2015 Russian-American first-person action movie Hardcore Henry. This was picked by Frankie Avila. He's over here on Wikipedia, taking a look at the Wikipedia page. What's up, Frankie?
Oh, not much. We're just about to talk about some Hardcore Henry.
Oh, yeah.
And see what y'all thought about it and try to just get behind the scenes a little bit.
Oh, definitely. And this movie, I didn't give it a really great assessment in the intro. I mean, we listened to it a little bit. But I'm open to discuss this movie, and who knows, maybe I'll change my mind by the end of this episode. I mean, honestly. I just might. Frankie, you just might convince me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Robert, what are your initial thoughts on this film?
I thought it was great for 2015. I wanted to see the movie, when the trailer came out, but, that didn't get to happen. So
yeah, the reason why that didn't get to happen is probably because it was only in the theaters for like 2 weeks, and then they ended up pulling it out.
They did, right?
Because there's a lot of bad critics like Rotten.com and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, apparently it had a almost 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes for a little while, but when the movie actually dropped, it went all the way down to 51%.
The reason being is it was so gory. It's just like such a badass hardcore first-person gun in your face, or you have a gun in somebody's face and their brains are exploding right in front of you. It wasn't for like a lot of audiences,
Oh,
it was just hardcore badass.
Hardcore Henry.
I will give this movie something. It has a lot of really memorable sequences to it, and the first person aspect is definitely novel. But Frankie, what was the initial production of this film like, from what you can see or from what you know? How did they really get into this movie?
Well, it started out with one of the directors. I'm bad with names.
It's Ilya Naishuller.
There you go. And he was making music videos.
Yes.
First person. And then he ended up getting in touch with this other guy that the other director. Fucking hardcore. Timur Bekmambetov.
Holy crap.
So anyways, how do you even say that?
Let me see. Timur Bekmambetov.
Alright, there you go.
Yeah.
So anyways, these guys collaborated and they're like, yeah, we need to make a first person movie because it hadn't been done. And they're both video game fans. And yeah, so
they're all GoPro, really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this is made with GoPro 3s, right?
Yeah, it was production, it was solo, it was just like indie film, how we love all that stuff.
Oh, certainly.
So they collaborated, they had $2 million, and the reason why is because they had so many fan base and stuff, and people that were pretty much investing into them. Yeah, and keep watching their videos and keeping them going.
Didn't this movie actually have a Kickstarter or something behind it that initially got the initial funds for the production or something like that?
It was just pretty much like they already had money.
Okay, right on.
I guess there would be a kickfunder. And then, like I said, it was just a whole bunch of fans that just kept funding into them.
It does totally show how
there was a lot of fan investors. That's what there was.
It totally shows how crowdsourcing can really get movies off of the ground. Like the indie film that we reviewed recently, Margam. They got a lot of their funding from, I believe, from some Kickstarters. I might be wrong. of course. I mean, I need to check into these things.
Yeah,
of course.
for sure.
Yeah, we need to.
Yeah. Once again, Collateral Cinema, ladies and gentlemen.
Kind of slacking here.
Like,
I think that that's going to become kind of a trademark of ours somewhere along the line. But what was the response to this movie on the festival circuit?
Well, that's how they actually started. It was like a festival, and it was really high. They made a lot of awards, and that's whenever they were going to exploit it to like the world in the United States and everything. And I don't know, that's where they went off of.
Yeah. I mean, didn't it preview at Cannes? Didn't it come out at the Cannes Film Festival?
Killing me, Small.
Wikipedia.
I can't scroll fast enough, bro.
Oh man, I think we need to hire an actual fact checker to just sit in the background and check this shit out.
Seriously. Had it all in mind before.
Well, anyway, yeah, apparently on the festival circuit, this was a little bit of a darling. Like, more or less. I mean, it got a pretty good reception from then, and from that circuit appeal, it kind of got its buzz that on Rotten Tomatoes. You know, like I said earlier, it got up to about 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
So that's pretty high base. And
that is.
And then why'd they just start turning it down and everybody...
It's because of the way that that the critics' reviews actually influences the scores on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, the critics' reception was 51% after the film was released, but then the audience was like 50%. It was very much almost split down the middle between the audiences and the critics. I mean, that really shows an interesting little divide there. But I mean, movie-going audiences, I mean, I guess they really liked this, more or less. You know, I mean...
Yeah, you're right. You killed it. It was 2015 Toronto International Film Festival.
Toronto International Film Festival. There we are. It wasn't really Canada. It was Toronto. That's still a good film festival, though.
That's Canada, right?
Yeah, in Canada. Yeah, exactly. Wow. Yeah, it's known as hardcore in certain countries, I believe.
Yeah, in Russian, that's what it is hardcore.
Yeah.
And then they changed the name to Hardcore Henry.
Yeah, that's an interesting name for the protagonist, I think, Henry. Like, I mean, what do you think?
Like you just gave a robot a name or something.
Yeah, right. Almost like Chappie.
Hey, Henry. How you doing, Henry?
I am Chappie. Oh, that's a movie that we probably need to get into sometime soon, because Diane's word. But anyway, the cinematography of this movie was interesting given the first-person aspect of it. I mean, this was used... They used GoPro 3s, I believe. I mean, ultimately, I think that the first-person perspective, I mean, it gives it a good little angle, at least for the first 45 minutes of the film, in my opinion. After that, it starts to kind of get a little grating, and you kind of want to maybe see Henry as an actual character, but other than that, it really is a technical marvel, what they did here, especially for spending less than $2 million.
Yeah.
You know,
that's where I'm going to shoot at, is because I've seen a lot of the behind the scenes and everything. Yeah. So knowing that, like, all the CGI that they had, all the VX that, you know, dude, it was sick. Like, he had him shooting through the van with a Gatling gun and splitting through vans.
Yeah.
For a low budget of $2 million, right?
Wow. That was pretty impressive.
And then
honestly,
pretty much all the stunt devils, everybody that was collaborated, that was a part of this movie, they were so hardcore. That's why I think the name Hardcore Henry suits it.
And honestly, I mean, the sound design was really, really spot on as well. I mean, every single movement had a audio reaction to it, pretty much, that made sense.
And some of the songs that actually innovated this movie, where they got this first person idea from those music videos were in this movie. Yeah,
we're going to get into the actual artists that are on the soundtrack here in a little bit. I mean, because it is a very compelling soundtrack, I will give it that.
Yeah, I love it all the way from beginning to end, because there's not very much talking, because he's first person and he doesn't have a sound box. And you're going through his eyes and he can't talk, so you're only seeing other people just bullshitting with him.
And there seem to be a lot of real practical special effects in this movie as
guess
well,
so,
as well as CGI effects, you know.
Oh, there is plenty of them.
Shit.
Yeah.
And stuff that you wouldn't even think was CGI, because I was watching it and I would be close. No,
Yeah,
it's real,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
real. And then, sure enough, no, they had a good CGI part in there.
It's because of all the movement that was always on screen, you know? I mean, yeah, it got grating after a while, but the good thing is that it did kind of hide the any kind of bad quality on the CGI. You know?
Oh, yeah. I didn't see none because there was always a stunt devil that was in that CGI.
Yeah.
So it was like, it was real, like if the van was flipping, it was actually flipping.
Yeah,
And then they would
yeah.
just throw some actual crazy flames and...
Yeah. And Robert, I mean, what do you think about some of the practical effects in this movie? Like, as far,
I'll just skip
More like
past
video
it.
games, right? Like
it's
Fallout.
very, very much like video games. Like, there's a lot of gore from a first-person perspective that was pretty well done.
I think that's
honestly.
the first time that's ever been done like that, right?
I mean, it
In
starts
many ways,
out,
yeah.
he has a love, like, you know, or...
Yeah, I mean,
Spoilers, but-
initially,
You know what I
It's like
loved
a
in
big
GoPro? I love that Need for Speed movie.
yeah, that was actually a good use of
You
GoPro.
know, they attached all the cameras to the car, man. That was all badass. Like,
Yeah.
Even to the driver, like the stunt driver, like right on his head.
Yeah, that really added an interesting perspective to those chase scenes in that movie. It really did. And yeah, I mean, the stunt work, I mean, there was how many different stunt actors that played the part of Henry
Really?
here?
13, I believe.
13 of them?
Parkour.
There was 13 different.
Yeah, all of them.
Director being one of them.
Yeah, the director was one of them, and there's just some incredible like parkour work in this. Like we're watching the scene where he was scaling up the side of the building, and he goes into the stoner's room, and he actually passes him a blunt, offers him.
Is that you want to hit this?
It's like, damn, I wasn't even aware that there was any kind of stoner culture in Russia like that. Like,
It's probably integrated from us.
yeah, it's probably very Western in its
Yeah.
in its construct. But yeah, I mean the stunt work. I mean,
They said that stunt devils were very much cowboy.
oh, very cowboy.
That's
Yeah,
what they were saying.
definitely. And some of them got injured because of the apparatus that mounted the GoPros and everything, right? Like,
Yeah, very much so. Chip tooth, stitches, of course a lot of bruises and whatnot, because
yeah.
I mean these guys were doing amazing things. And what it was is every
it
single
fire
guy
explosives?
was a pro at what they did. Like you see the scene of riding a horse. The guy was a pro at riding a horse. Or if you see somebody falling from the sky, they were a pro at doing that. Like every single guy had their job.
yeah, they had specific expertise in what they were filming and everything.
Exactly,
what they were doing
for
on the
that
screen.
scene. And that's
Yeah.
what it is. If you really watch the movie and you watch it a couple times, it's more like chapters. It's like a chapter, scene. That's why you're like, man, and then you really get in watching the scene, you're like, this scene is awesome for this purpose and this reason.
It's like a video game, right, dude?
Yeah,
Yeah, very much so. Like,
I mean,
Xbox.
and the FPS is just the best. I mean, you can't beat it. Just look at this. You get headshots all day long. I mean,
yeah, it's
That's badass.
Oh, he's the best.
And also the gore at the end scene, you know, with the fight with all the cyber soldiers and with the Khan.
Oh, yes.
It's like, oh yeah, I mean that was really
when
really
you really
crazy.
learn what's going on, that's where it's at. That's what I'm saying. You're right. Maybe in the middle you're kind of a little lost.
Yeah,
You're like-
yeah. It does start to drag a bit.
But at the end,
really
it just
does.
like, and then it blows your mind. And you're like,
I found myself kind of going in and out in the whole final fight scene with all the mooks, all the cyber soldier dudes. Like,
yeah.
I was kind of going in and out, paying attention to that. But I did see a lot of the gore effects, like the dude getting thrown into the fan. Like, I mean, that was pretty cool, right?
That's crazy.
Right. Now, Robert, what do you think about the apparatus that was used to film this movie?
The GoPro?
Yeah, the face mounted.
Oh, I never got to see the behind the scenes, really. Yeah.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
I mean, I saw it. It kind of looked almost like a welder's mask, but with a frame around it or something like that. I mean, it was very interesting, actually.
They said it was actually very, very supportive to their necks, their heads. That there was one shot that there's a guy, he's on flames, and he's jumping through a window.
Oh,
and he goes through a window and it doesn't affect him or anything. So it was very abrasive to their bodies. So it was well made. But there was some accidents. I mean, when you get crazy and you're doing stunt stuff, when you're watching this video...
Especially when everything just seems like one long shot of violence and mayhem, you know?
That's all it is. It's constant. It never stops. It's a run-through. That's what I love about it. It's an adventure. It's like you're the first person.
Parkour. That's the G4 stuff, right?
Oh, yeah. These
straight
guys
up.
are awesome.
Yeah, I mean, these are total professionals.
I think right here, this is supposed to be like 16, 17 story drop right here.
Oh my god.
And he does drop down in here into a trash can. See that trash can down there?
Oh, yeah.
See how fast he's going?
Jeez, no way.
Yes.
Oh, great.
Real.
Yeah. That's an awesome scene.
Every scene, that's why you have to critique everyone.
And also, I really, really like how Moscow is kind of its own character in a way. You know,
oh, wow, really?
Like that's kind of what it's like. It's its own character, like throughout the series. Like even many of those supposed bystanders, you know, they were.
It is.
They were like helping out and everything. They were trying to help Henry out.
Yeah, Russia it definitely is its own thing. It's crazy for it being like an American English-speaking movie, but they're in Russia. Is that what you mean by?
Yeah. I mean, it seems like everybody in Russia just kind of, or in Moscow, they just really make this movie something a little different.
They do.
Know? I mean, they are kind of the best part of the movie.
They had, like I said, a big fan base.
Now, speaking of characters, there's really only like 4 main characters in this movie, right? Like there's Estelle, Akan, Henry, and Jimmy. And I guess that there's some other ancillary characters like Mr. Fahrenheit and Slick Dimitri and everything, but this is really those 4 characters. That's the whole story is set around. But I mean, what can we really say about the main protagonist so far from this movie? Like, I mean, we absolutely get no idea how he gets into this predicament.
Yeah, at this point, you really don't even know what's happening.
Yeah. We're very much kept in the dark, you know, much in the same way as Henry is. And it's the best way to kind of, experience that, especially in the first-person angle.
Especially when you can throw a bottle at somebody back of the head like this.
Yeah, right? Like
really
perfectly.
Think.
I mean, this all looks like one long shot and everything, and every character just kind of plays their part like beautifully, really.
Yeah.
I mean, like, Jimmy's character is hilarious, I think. Like, he's my favorite.
Yeah, Jimmy's
this entire movie.
I mean, whenever he's snorting coke off of certain parts of bodies, head gets blown off.
Yeah, a head just got blown off. We got the movie going on simultaneously while we're recording this, and that was pretty rowdy, gotta say. Yeah, and, I mean, Estelle herself, I mean, at first you think that she's your wife, that she's Henry's wife, you know, at first. And, you know, it does seem like she's trying to help him actually escape and live through this entire ordeal. But anyway, Estelle herself, she's starts off as the wife and she ends up in a different role, let's say. Akan has the main villain has a very, very interesting ability. He's like telekinetic in some way. Yeah. Robert, how do you think that that could play into his backstory or whatever? Because they're never really it's never really given why he has these abilities.
Just like Darth Vader, somebody make their head explode.
Yeah.
Right?
Like I think there was some speculation online that he may have gotten some type of military augmentation, you know, I mean, because he is part of a cyber soldier program, you know.
Yeah,
so.
They kind of hint it in the beginning.
Yeah?
Yeah, they do, because they're, like, trying to make forces and stuff, and they're looking for power sources, obviously. And, so, yes, that is one of those things that he would have top ability access to.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. I mean, and also, Henry, going back to Henry himself, I mean, we only see a glimpse of him, actually, his actual face in the entire movie. You know, like that one little glimpse in the mirror when looks like he's beaten before he has the, before he goes into the final battle, you know. But I still can't really feel that much of a connection to him, though. You know, even though it's supposed to be intimate and we're supposed to have this first-person view of his experience, like, I still found it very difficult to really visualize Henry as anything more than just a superficial construct, kind of.
Pretty much, I think he's all for him. Jimmy has pretty much been using him since he was born.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because he had some other... it's hard to...
Well, what it is that Henry as a character, he has no actual control over his actual fate in this entire movie. Everything that's happening to him, whether it's influenced by a con or it's influenced by Jimmy, it's all influenced by someone else. He doesn't make a final choice for himself until the end of the movie.
Yeah. It's a classic Pinocchio, bro.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. It's like a Pinocchio story.
So
what was that other one? With Haley Joel Osment, where he was a robot.
Artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence.
AI.
AI.
Yeah, that kind of has a similar theme to
There's
it.
a lot.
Yeah.
Almost. You don't know.
Yeah,
Wake up.
We are watching the brothel scene now, and there are lots of boobies. Lots and lots of boobies, guys.
Boobies.
We
have
can't
to do a lot of editing on this one.
Oh, come on now. We have an explicit tag on our podcast. People know what they're getting into. People know what I think we all know what we're getting into with Collateral Cinema, you know. So, fuck it, I guess.
Fuck it.
Fuck it. But how do you think the directing of this movie really influenced the performances of the actors?
Actually, intensely. I think they had a big influence on all the actors. They pretty much had their mindset of what they wanted. That's exactly why every time Henry is a different person for a different scene, is because they knew that they wanted that actor to have that exact proness for that shot and that experience. Already
for sure.
Firsthand. So that they're going in there and they're not going to have to take 30 different shots because they only had such a low budget.
Like, for instance, right now we're watching the action sequence in the brothel, and this is obviously a stuntman that has quite a bit of experience with guns and fighting.
He's sliding
and stuff. Like, he's done that type of stunt work more than anything. I mean, I'm pretty sure that in the stunt community they have very specified roles for very specified stunts, you know, like...
And that's another thing. They were in Russia. It's not like they're in such a protected spot where like they had to protect their stunt guys and harnesses and all this.
Oh that's true, man.
They just did shots like this, and I'm sure a lot of even the back stunt guys got hurt.
A lot of those parkour scenes actually look like they don't have a harness on.
Oh, they don't. They don't. They literally don't. Like, even on top of when they're on top of bridges or anywhere. They really don't. And that's why it's so awesome, and they were able to shoot the movie so quick. I think it took them 3 years. Though, and
that makes sense. I mean, given the technical aspects of this movie, I mean, it looks like it would take a good 3 or 4 years to really get down the way that you need it.
Yeah, I think it was 3 years that it took them, and they're just a little disappointed on that one. They could have taken a shorter period of time, but still, they spent that $2 million. And the reason why is because they had to set up these days for all these shots. That's why it's that's almost why it's like chapters. It's like it jumps into one shot. It's because they had to set up for this for a long time for this.
And yet it still very much feels like one long shot, more or less.
It's a continuous. It's like
very continuous. You know?
Yeah, especially like if you're a video game guy and you always wanted to beat the chapter so you can get a cut scene. It's a cut scene all the way through.
It pretty much is. It's like a cut scene and then actual gameplay scenes. That's kind of what it feels like.
Actually, right. When they get the FPS going on.
And the constant movement involved in this movie, I mean, that it must have had some real effect on acting, on the acting of the film as well, you know? I mean, there's always movement in this movie.
Constant.
Yeah, there's no actual rest unless Unless Henry is actually in a resting position.
Yeah, like got knocked out or something, and dazed out.
Or he's pinned down or something, you know. But I mean, that definitely brought out certain aspects of the performances that otherwise, in any more conventional action movies, probably would not have translated well. Oh yeah, this scene right here, where the stoner Jimmy is, he's interrogating this hooded guy. That's actually the director right there. That's Ilya Naishuller.
Yeah,
that's him right there. Funny scene, by the way. I really like this scene. And man, what a lot of great scenes there are in this film. I mean, even though, like I said, it does drag down a little bit, there's still a lot of stuff that's memorable here.
Yeah, that's where I'm coming from. Is I'm more of the or learning photography or anything like that, and these guys are super pros, and they didn't have nothing but GoPros. And it just shows you.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like the cinematography is such great quality that I mean you can tell it's GoPros, but you kind of can't as well, you know.
Yeah, you gotta delete all that shit.
Yeah,
all of it. No, I'm just kidding. No, but you do, really.
Yeah, but the opening sequence itself, like that, I mean, it pretty much just sets the movie in motion rather well. It really does, you know. I mean, you meet Estelle, you see that she's allegedly Henry's wife, and then you see you're also introduced to Akon and everything. I mean, it sets it up pretty well, like in a nice little package, you know. Like you could just unpack it and everything's in place. Like, what do you think?
I don't know. I'm just hardcore fucking action fan, and
of course.
This movie just brings it to it.
Yeah, like that brothel scene that we just saw a few minutes ago. Like, I mean,
right here is the hardest. That van actually really flipped over.
Yeah,
Everything has a lot of CGI, but there's a lot to it too.
Oh yeah, there's a lot here that's practical. Like I said earlier, like this whole thing where they go through that truck and they have the Gatling gun. That's all real.
He's really getting dragged.
This dude's getting dragged on the side of the sidecar of the motorcycle. Like, yeah, I mean, this is a marvel of stunt work and choreography and everything, man.
He's not there.
I mean, this beats the living hell out of the.
He's not there.
Yeah.
In real life.
Oh, that was added in there by CGI. Yeah. I got you, man. That's cool. And this highway chase scene, I mean, I just love how well it seamlessly flows together, you know?
All of it does. I don't know what...
Yeah. In some ways, it almost kind of feels like one of those rail shooter games, you know, where you had a light gun and you were shooting all the bad guys on the screen. It kind of
like
has
Time
that
Crisis?
Yeah, like Time Crisis or Area 51 or something like that.
Like a roller coaster FPS.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, oh yeah, that's an awesome scene right there.
Yeah, they all are.
then there's that whole.
Those are CGI.
Then there's that whole scene. Yeah, I can tell that's CGI a little bit, but I mean.
No, it is. Yeah, it's hard to tell, right?
Yeah. But I mean, that whole dance scene that Jimmy does doesn't the movie kind of grind to a halt there a little bit? I mean, it just kind of comes out of nowhere. He's singing "Under My Skin" by Sinatra, and
he's the one that created the company.
Yeah, but he's. I'm saying that
so
scene
he's trying
in general.
To like kill the company.
No, I'm talking about that scene in general where he's dancing and everything. And he's going into all of his avatar dudes or whatever.
Yeah, like, back and forth.
That scene I was just like, what? What the fuck was this? When
he's exposing himself and just pretty much telling him like I was fucking with you and telling the truth pretty much.
But in a way, it qualifies as what's called a big-lipped alligator moment. That's basically like a sequence in a movie that just kind of comes out of nowhere. It usually involves a song. Like you watch it and then it just goes away and it's never brought up again. That's a big-lipped alligator moment, and that's pretty much what that is, man. It's like it's never really referenced again. You're just kind of like, what the fuck, you know?
Yeah, but then you have to protect Jimmy and go down to the bottom and get him out of there.
Yeah, but also another angle you could take is that, I mean, that's very similar humor that you see in a lot of video games. I mean, a lot of video games tend to have that kind of weird humor to it.
That's what you have to pretty much.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe take that with a grain of
as.
salt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
This movie is.
I would say all the scenes. Yeah, we have a scene here with Akon. Akon is. He just chews scenery, man. I actually really like this guy as well. Him and Jimmy are arguably the two best.
He's crazy.
Yeah, they're the two of the best characters in this entire film. I mean, like I said, he chews scenery almost on a Raul Julia level, man. Like in Street Fighter, you know, as M. Bison. I mean, it's almost to that level.
He does look like Bison. Man.
He almost has an M. Bison quality to him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that might be another little video game reference, because there are a lot of little hidden references in this movie.
Yeah, Easter eggs and stuff.
Yeah, there's lots of Easter eggs. I mean, we're not going to get into all of them.
There is
here.
some.
But I mean, like for instance, there's a certain scene that looks like the ending scene in Under Siege 2. I'm sure people will know what that scene is. I mean, that's just off the top of my head. But like all the parkour scenes are really, really well done as well. I mean, they were seriously done with masters of the.
I like that too.
Yeah, they were all done with masters of that particular sport. I mean, I guess you could say it's a sport, right?
Yeah.
It's a sport. Yeah, I mean, that shit was really well done with the GoPros and everything.
Excellent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, this whole thing where you actually see Henry's eye dangling down and there's two different perspectives. That's interesting right there.
That is
I
cool.
like that. I really do like that. And then there's that one scene where, spoiler alerts once again, they're fighting the rapist cops. Those cops that are trying to rape that girl. Like, Henry fucks those guys up, right?
Yeah.
Like...
That's right after.
Man.
That's like right after he's like
he
looking for his wife,
and he encounters Gilly Jimmy in the Gilly suit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. He encounters him.
Sniper.
Yeah, the sniper Gilly.
Yep. Gilly guy.
Yeah.
Gilly.
Yeah, that scene was pretty brutal, man. Like I actually like that one.
Yeah,
I mean, it's good to see assholes get their comeuppance,
That's what I like about all Jimmys. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's little chapters of different Jimmys with Henry.
Well, I mean, supposedly...
Until you finally figure out who the hell fucking Jimmy
supposedly
is.
Jimmy's kind of a whole play on the non-playable characters in first-person shooter games, They're usually like the ones that are like the tutorial for at the beginning of the game, or they're the ones that actually kind of guide you through everything.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's really what this movie is kind of seen as a commentary on a little bit, I mean, there's also a little bit of a deconstruction of first-person shooters at play here. You know what I mean? Like, it really kind of plays out, some of the tropes, like, for instance, not having a voice box, being a voiceless protagonist, that's explained because he doesn't have a voice box.
You want to know why I like that?
What?
Because it makes me feel like I'm Henry.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, him not having a voice, that does give him some dimension, but it also...
It gives me the feeling that I'm...
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, I had the opposite effect. It kind of served to make me feel kind of distant from him, but that's probably just me, honestly. I mean, I kind of felt distance to him there, but also...
How many video games growing up that a lot of them actually have a voice?
Yeah,
you had to read.
That's true. I mean, BioShock, I mean, that had some voice acting with the protagonist. I mean, especially in BioShock Infinite. That had that. I mean, but yeah, in Call of Duty or Battlefield, which is what this movie is obviously referencing and kind of going off of, I mean, yeah, there's usually a voiceless protagonist, I mean, except maybe in some cutscenes, and also, I mean, there's also like seemingly endless enemies just kind of coming out of nowhere. That's kind of explained a little bit as well in two ways. Like, first there's the tracking chip, and that, of course he's going to have a tracking chip, right?
Yeah.
He's a cyborg, It's like that goes all the way back to like RoboCop and shit, pretty much.
Exactly.
And then another trope, which is brought up is that, Akon is actually viewing all of the events through Henry's eyes. Henry's eyes are cameras broadcasting to Akon. And, I mean, that explains that as well. I mean, how they could easily find him and everything. Because, there's several scenes where Khan just kind of shows up, out of nowhere. Like in the brothel scene where he's talking to that one dude.
You don't know none of this stuff.
Yeah, of course. But also, he's a cyber soldier, so he has kind of the super strength that a lot of video game characters seem to have, recovering from serious injuries in less than a few minutes.
Yes.
That's kind of explained there.
No, not so much.
Well, it's vaguely explained there. It's kind of given something of a plausible explanation there. But I think
he's more lucky than anything.
Probably. But you have to remember, Henry's character, he's constantly just pretty much guided through this entire sequence of events either by a Khan or Jimmy. It's not till the end that he finally has some choice in the matter, but...
Yeah, he's fighting both.
But that also goes into another trope called mission control NPCs. Oh yeah, this is a great scene right here. We're going to go ahead and just go off on a tangent here, where the Magnificent Seven music comes into play, and he tries to jump on the horse, and the horse knocks him off.
Yep.
Yeah, we just wanted to go ahead and point out that scene, because that scene is pretty fucking awesome as well. But yeah, Jimmy are the mission control NPCs there. Like, he's pretty much like the tutorial guide, pretty much.
Yeah,
throughout
because
the entire movie.
He's talking through him. He has GPS on him, and he's fighting the other guys.
Yeah.
But hey, he doesn't even know.
Oh no, not at all.
He's just looking for his wife.
Well, yeah, allegedly looking for his wife.
He don't know.
Hint, hint. Yeah. And also there's the different iterations of Jimmy that are interesting, like you have right here the ghillie sniper Jimmy.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, he's really cool.
So many different
And there's also that World War II Jimmy, which is very much like
He's the best.
He's pretty much a callback to the Medal of Honor and Call of Duty, kind of.
Yeah, he's a French warrior.
British. He's very, very posh and British chap. That kind of.
Sorry, chap.
Like how World War II officers in the British Army were kind of seen as.
Yeah.
And of course, there's his wife Estelle, who is a damsel in distress, but that is subverted in ways that we're not going to get into right now. But yeah, this whole deconstruction of the first-person shooter genre, it's interesting to me, but then again, I don't really play a whole lot of first-person shooters. Like, last one that I really played was BioShock Infinite.
And missing out.
Yeah, I know, but it's just never really appealed to me that much. Like, maybe I could do Skyrim, but that's more of an RPG.
I'm on a new one.
Yeah.
Shadowgun Legends.
Oh, I've heard about that one. I've heard some good stuff about that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Hopefully they endorse me.
Hopefully.
I'm top 12,000. I was top 6,000 and I had dropped down because I haven't played in 2 days.
Yeah. That's right, y'all. Frankie is quite a gamer. Isn't that right, Frankie?
I try.
He tries. And I guess this would be an appropriate movie for you to choose then, being that it has that obvious first-person shooter game quality to it.
Oh, for sure.
Mainly
it's just...
And, for a sci-fi movie, it actually kind of works.
I just love how, like I said before, the silence, I guess I feel like I turned into the character, the way he looks. And
yeah.
Even, his angles, the way he actually looks through his eyes.
Yeah, but...
through the camera and stuff.
But I read...
things and...
I read somewhere that... Part of the reason why they have that one little glimpse of Henry's face is to kind of break that a little bit and kind of bring it back down to, in the end, this is still a man that's just been put into some really extenuating circumstances and just so happens to have been given the abilities to handle it,
I don't know, when you look at his internals, he's pretty much all robotic.
All robotic. If you remember the internal image in the movie, he has some... bone matter left, and some organs.
Yeah, he's a little there.
Yeah, he has some of it there.
Pretty much just killing the whole movie.
No. If you love this movie, I do.
Whoever you are,
it's a good.
Points I'm trying.
It's good. Like I said, it's fine to me. I
almost needed a reset on this. I'll tell you later.
Yeah, but Well, we're going to get into the soundtrack of this movie now. This soundtrack had artists such as The Stranglers, Serge Tankian. It had Sublime on it. That was really cool.
Nice.
It had Temptations. That was playing during, My Girl was playing during the brothel scene, which was really, really well done, I'll say.
Pretty much.
And also Queen. Queen, of course.
That's
probably a way better use of Queen than in the Suicide Squad trailer.
Dude,
way better.
Good call.
Way better use than that.
I haven't even thought of that. Yeah.
Oh God, Suicide Squad is going to have to be something we're going to get to eventually, and Oh my God, I'm not looking forward to that. But yeah, this soundtrack, it really fits the movie well. The interstitial music during the action sequences, it's usually more like straight techno, and a lot of that, I think it was, a lot of that was done by the director, and actually I think the composer is his wife, the girl that plays Katya.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's his wife.
Okay.
And she actually composed some of that music, I think. Her and her husband.
But like you said, it was really sequential.
Yeah.
To movements and pretty much everything. Actually, throughout the whole movie, since he doesn't have a voice, music pretty much, all the songs and stuff kind of speak for him.
Yeah.
Through his movements and stuff.
I could see how that works.
They kind of
really
collaborate with his movements and the situation that he's going through. If it's high, low.
Like, for instance, in battle when Queen is playing when he's fighting all the other cyber soldiers. That is definitely his elevated state.
He's got to be ramped up so high.
Yes, and he doesn't he take a hit of adrenaline real quick?
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line. Double leg just right in his fucking legs, and he just goes off.
Sure does.
Yeah, the music does really help elevate this movie a little bit in my eyes, And
like I said, speak for Henry, because he don't have a voice, so that's kind of what's going through his brain as he's going through all these situations.
And then, like we said earlier, there was that little Magnificent Seven reference there that was pretty cool with the horse scene. It's that's a good little Western.
Yep.
Yeah. That definitely was way better done than Suicide Squad, once again.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Once again, that was a movie that just didn't know how to use its soundtrack at all. So, but this movie knows what its soundtrack is and how to use it.
I wasn't a fan of the Joker.
Oh, yeah. but we'll get to that movie eventually. Believe me, ladies and gentlemen, we will take on that movie.
We'll cut that out of this.
No, we're not gonna. I'm not gonna cut that out of this. That's pretty much a promo for a future episode. It's we are definitely going to do that movie. But even the use of "Under My Skin" by Sinatra in this little dance sequence. that's interesting, I guess. It's an interesting choice. And doesn't Jimmy make a little joke about his I do like musicals, but that does not make me gay or something like that? He even references that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah, but yeah, this soundtrack I would actually stream that on YouTube, and if they have it up on YouTube, man, I would totally jam that
for sure.
It's got a little bit of punk,
it's got everything,
some techno, some crooning. Shit,
I'm sure somebody's already posted it.
Yeah. It's a pretty solid soundtrack. Spoiler alert, everybody, we are going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the ending because that is very noteworthy. It's pretty cool. If y'all don't like the spoilers, we will put them in the show notes. I'll track them down and I'll put them in the show notes. But, Akan is killed by Henry in a very unique way. After he levitates all of the bodies of the cyber soldiers around him, that allows Henry to get some leverage, jump up in the air and grab Akan, and he takes his eye out, wraps his eye stalk around his head, and straight up just decapitates him through the middle of his head. That was very over the top.
No,
you don't think that was over the top?
Not at all.
Really?
For this whole movie, If you watch every single kill shot, every single thing, it's gory. And that's how it's meant to be. It's meant to be.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's some great gore effects in this movie, and that one really takes the cake because of the dual cameras that are at play there. You know.
So have you ever seen that before?
No, I can't say I've seen that before. I mean, I've seen some interesting decapitations on screen, some very creative ones.
That's why it's amazing.
Yeah, that is
it's one of a kind.
Very different. And then how he straight up takes the fucking half a head and shows it to Estelle.
He's walking up to her.
Yeah.
She's like, no. I mean,
and Estelle, who ends up, once again, spoiler alert, she ends up being in on the whole conspiracy with Akan. In fact, Akan is her lover, to tell the truth. She goes berserk after seeing Akan's head and has pretty much an emotional breakdown and tries to straight kill him, but he overtakes her pretty easily.
Yeah, he's pretty damn strong.
Yeah, and Estelle wasn't going to do much of anything to him, unfortunately.
Definitely put that arm and cyborg leg on him.
Yeah. But, I mean, there was some foreshadowing a little bit, Once you actually found out that there was a tracking device in his arm, you could figure out that, who else could have put it there? It would have been his so-called wife,
I'll tell you what, I'm actually really good when I watch movies like Saw and all that.
Uh-huh.
I was able to pre-predict pretty much every single plot. A lot of movies.
Yeah.
And right whenever in the very beginning, the way I saw her emotion and the way she acted to whenever she asked him a certain question, I already knew that's what the plot behind the plot was.
Also, if you look in the opening of the movie, if you look at what she's wearing, there's a little bit of a visual cue that kind of connects her to Akan a little bit. She's wearing similar colors to Akan, so they're kind of matching a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm always good at stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, some people would probably see that as a detriment to the film. I mean, me personally, I saw it coming, but I mean, it didn't really affect
There's so many people oblivious to the
it didn't affect my experience with the movie. So, I mean, it's like, oh, whatever,
Yeah, there's like so many mystery films and stuff that somebody can catch and be already plotted out in their head, and then at the other person right next to him be like, I don't know what's even going on.
Yeah.
So
what flaws do you think there might be in this movie that you can see, even as a fan? Even as a fan of the movie, is there anything in this movie that you could point out that could have been done better?
Like I was talking to you earlier about it, I give it like a 4.3 out of 5.
4.3 out of 5, right on.
And reason being, somehow amazingly they had this fan base budget that they had all these investors, and they made it possible. It wouldn't even be possible because of them.
Yeah.
And that's why they went to Russia, when they were able to do these crazy things you would not even be able to do in the United States. You have to have permits. You would have to have so much crazy stuff to even get one scene shot. And for them, in the budget, that they did the same thing. That's why it's like cut scenes. It goes from 1 to 1 to 1 to 1.
Oh yeah.
Because they prepped and prepped and prepped and prepped, and it made sure, even there, I'm sure they had to have permits and for some.
Oh yeah, for some of the stuff, but I mean, I'm not.
Most of the time they didn't.
I'm not really privy to what type of regulations they have in Russia regarding that.
Yeah, they probably don't have none.
Probably not.
Probably not, and that's why they were able to hire these guys for probably near to nothing.
Yeah.
And because they're willing, they're like, hell, you want me to be in a movie? I'm gonna be in a movie. I can do that. Hell yeah, sign me up.
Yeah.
Sure enough, and so I mean, for the budget, everything, just look at the choreography.
Yeah.
The FPS thing that they got going on, it was
I think I see what you're saying. I mean, but to me, like I pretty much laid out all the flaws that I felt were in this movie, like pretty much in the intro, you know. But I mean, it does drag down a little bit, but I mean, I don't know how they could have really remedied that, or I don't know if maybe I need to go back and just watch the movie again and try to take in a different perspective now that we've talked about it. But
Yeah.
I mean, it just became a little boring to me near the end. Just a little bit, you know? Which, I mean, and when you have an action movie like this where there's so much going on the screen, like, that shouldn't happen. Like, that's just my attitude about that. You know, my opinion about it.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess where you're trying to come from, too, is it didn't have, like, cuts, or a lot more cuts where there was story-based.
Yeah, where
like,
there was a little more story.
Something
yeah.
that told you what's actually going on.
Well, I mean, I don't need to be told. I mean, in the end, show don't tell is always best.
But that's why I'm thinking, like, what was it, like, supposedly, what happened, in 2 days all this is going on or something like that?
Yeah, it seems like this is like 48 hours in these people's lives.
So I haven't really quite. So there's no story to be told, really.
Yeah.
Who woke up and...
Yeah, I mean, this right here.
We woke up. That's what I'm saying. I woke up.
We're pretty much watching the scene now where the movie pretty much eventually kind of tapered off for me when they're surrounding Henry and Jimmy and everything. I mean, this is where it just kind of, you know, falls off a little bit.
When he drops it.
Yeah, no, this is when the movie just kind of tapers off a little bit, and I'm just like,
boom.
Yeah, that was pretty cool, I guess. But it's like, I don't know.
That's why I look at it that perspective. I guess it's like actually what it took for them to do those shots.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's gonna be like 100% A budget film or anything, but
yeah,
what it actually made them or took for them to do those shots and for what they had, they killed it. I mean,
yeah,
there's no way anybody.
They definitely executed what they wanted to execute here, and they did it well. I mean, there's no doubt about that, you know. And like I've said in the intro, it's fine. It becomes a little boring to me after a while, after the novelty wears off. But then, well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I need to be more of a first-person shooter fan or something like that. Maybe I just need to play more of those types of games.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it could be that. You know, because this is a very gamer-rific movie, even more so than the movie Gamer, which we will also take on, because god damn that movie.
Gamer.
Oh, I can't stand that fucking movie. Oh, jeez. Well, anyway, yeah, that is Hardcore Henry. I mean, what is your official score again, Frankie?
4.3.
4.3 out of 5?
Yeah.
I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Like I said, it's fine. You know, maybe if I watch it again, maybe my opinion will change a little bit, but I mean, as of now, like, it's good for what it is, but it gets a little boring and bland in my opinion. That's just me. Don't take my word for it at all, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, come on now.
Alright, if you like hardcore action, definitely check into it, because this is one of those ones, and definitely don't have your little kids around, because it is gory, and I think that's why a lot of people can't handle it.
And there's definitely lots of nudity and boobs and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's
par for the course, you know.
Yep, it's definitely keep you going, because it never stops.
Nope.
You never know what's going to happen next.
But, I mean, I'm not sure what Robert would give this movie. I mean, I would probably imagine maybe a 4 as well. But, I mean, I'm not going to speculate any further on that, honestly. That's him, and, you know.
For sure.
Whatevs, man. Whatevs. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a special episode coming up here on the next episode. We're going to do our 420 episode.
Hell yeah.
And we are going to be doing a great stoner movie, in my opinion. That's a lot of fun to watch. It stars Method Man and Redman. We are doing How High. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. You know, I mean, and I can't wait to really discuss why, because, man, that movie really, it's funny. I mean, it's fun to get stoned
revolutionary.
To. It's pretty revolutionary when it comes to stoner movies.
Yeah,
it is.
420 movies.
Yeah,
for sure.
And we're going to have, like, pretty much everybody in here, man. We're going to have, you know, of course, Frankie's going to be here. We're going to have Joseph in the house, Joseph Cantu. Like, I mean, he's been a little absent lately, but we're going to have him back on the show again. Of course, Robert's going to be there. And maybe we'll have some other special guests. I'm not sure. We'll kind of figure that out whenever we get around to it. Like, I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun, folks. I mean, like we said, we are a 420 friendly podcast, so we are definitely going to get all kinds of twisted, right?
Twisted like a motherfucker.
Twisted like a motherfucker. Well, all right, ladies and gentlemen, you can find us on Twitter, you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on Podbean, WordPress, Tumblr, Stitcher, and you can also find us on YouTube. You can check out our Patreon, it's linked to our Podbean account, and I will say go ahead and give Hardcore Henry a try. Why the hell not?
I'm gonna definitely say give it a freaking try.
Oh yeah. No, go ahead and say it correctly. Give it
Alright, give it a fucking try.
Yeah, there you go.
It is a hardcore movie. And if you love blood and gore FPS games, you definitely have to hit it up because I'm gonna tell you, it's definitely the 4-3 that I'm giving it.
Yeah.
If you're behind the scenes, love the kind of stuff that people can do with low budget money, and see the magic that they had created with what they had, and you know, they were able to make a high budget. So hopefully there'll be a part 2.
Right on. Hopefully, maybe there will be. I'll give it another shot. You know, sometime soon. I will. Well, everybody, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you for joining us. Join us for our 420 episode. We look forward to it. And Collateral Cinema is out.
Howdy.
Howdy.
What makes you think you can bullshit your way into my head? Like every other pencil neck piece of shit.
Collateral Cinema is an L Comedy production.